So, the one is not just some supreme being separate from us, or else it wouldn't be the one, because it would be separate. The one is unity. It consists of everything. So the one is made up of individual monads. So individual minds make up the supreme monad. So it's a collective monadic mind made up of individual monadic minds thinking individual thoughts. So rather than merging and melding our individual monad with the one, losing our individuality, we become aware that our individual thinking monad makes up a part of the one. Our individual monadic minds co-create the material world collectively, like a public dream of some sorts. Hence, you can't really control anything in the waking world because it's a public dream. So you're not in control of it like you would be in your private dreams, which are subjective and you control because they come from your own mind. We'll get into that too. So, our individual monads reside outside space time. So while our bodies are here in the physical realm, our minds are not in space time. They're outside space time. They're dimensionless. They're unextended. And Cartesian philosophy touches on that, even though he couldn't connect the two, thinking them as two separate domains, when they're actually, like I said in the first video, a dual aspect monism. So we as men are linked to collective unconscious that psychoanalyst Carl Jung spoke of. This is the domain of archetypes, angels, demons, spirits, ghosts, and apparitions. If you have a vision, chances are that's your right brain at work. It's all within your mind, not outside of you. So, with that said, let's talk about God. You say that God has a personality. Well, I say that God is eternal, necessary, unextended, uncreated, unchanging, and most importantly, undivided. I also speculate that God should be acknowledged in the deist sense, meaning God does not get involved in the affairs of the material world as an eternal, uncreated, and undivided being. However, God, or the One, does subdivide itself through the process of individuation. Through this process, another self-consciousness comes into existence. Or God can't know itself until it has another self-consciousness which to compare, compete, and conflict with. How would God know what conflict is, what comparison is, what competition is, if he has no one to compete with? If it's just the one eternal, undivided, unchanging form that takes place in its essence, it can't have anything to compare itself with because it's always that one unity. So, moving on, we find out that God has a will, which fuels desire. So do we. Man has a will that fuels desire. As above, so below. Second Hermetic principle, by the way. There are those who spoke of this will, like Friedrich Nietzsche. He called this the will to power. Schopenhauer, another philosopher, also acknowledged this striving noumenal will. And also Hegel called it Geist, and so on. You can go on. And it comes from something outside of space-time. So you can think of God in the deist sense, or the one, as a parent who is rooting for us. The God's cheering for us, the one's cheering for us, but at the same time will not get directly involved so that we can learn our own lessons. So God slash the one also gifts us with useful tools in order to understand the truth of self and of existence. And this helps you in two ways. It forces you to accept personal responsibility for your spiritual growth. That's number one. And number two, it frees you from the binds of religious authorities and dogma. I need to touch on the nous, which is spelled N-O-U-S, not N-O-O-S-E. Nous, N-O-U-S, represents intellect. Because of nous, man can engage in logic, reason, analytic and critical thinking, inductive reasoning, deductive reasoning, and abductive reasoning, defining terms, communicating information, etc. Nous has also been referred to as logos, as can be found in the Greek version of John chapter 1 verse 1, where in the beginning was logos. So if we reinterpret John without all the kosher dressing and instead interpret it through a Neoplatonic lens, it would probably sound as follows. The eternal, uncreated Logos, Nous, was with the eternal, uncreated One, while at the same time, the eternal, uncreated Logos, Nous, was the eternal, uncreated one. Then the Logos, nous, descended in frequency to become individuated and dense as a man. So you see the difference? Rather than speaking the essence of a creator God and a created being, from the Neoplatonic viewpoint, we start from eternal existence and never stray from that. Everything ties in with everything else. So next, the world soul has the same model as the one. Individual souls with with individual unique frequencies grouped collectively together. Because the principle of sufficient reason would argue that if there is one soul in existence, there must be infinite souls in existence because there would be no sufficient reason for there not to be. Because of this, free will remains intact. And then finally, you have the material world. Always remember that the source of all things is the one, and that matter is merely extended dimensional mind fragmented through individuation, mind on a much lower frequency. Compare this to the biblical belief of creation out of non existence, which is illogical and irrational. So, if we were to reinterpret Genesis chapter 1 through a Neoplatonic lens, it could be written as follows. The One, the Eternal, the Uncreated, the Unchanged existed in a state of darkness. The One had an idea through the nous and a desire through the world soul, which manifested in the form of light, the connection between mind and matter. With the help of the nous and the world soul, the One differentiated the light of thought from the darkness of no thought. Day one, representation of time. The light from the nous descended in frequency to manifest the sky, space, in the sense of air, and the seas, space, in the sense of water. The One, with the help of the nous and the world soul, differentiated the two spaces. Day two. So now we have space, time, air, and water. More light from the nous descended further in frequency to manifest the dry earth, matter, which represents the earth. And the One, with the help of the nous and the world soul, differentiated the space of water from the matter of earth. Day three. The space of the sky curved and compressed some of the light of the nous into a greater major light called the sun, fire, a lesser major light called the moon, a lesser fire, and minor lights called stars, minor fire, which represented a reliable way to measure time periods. The One, with the help of the nous and world soul, differentiated the greater, major, less major, and minor lights. Day four. So we're going to stop at day four because I wanted to stop there and I did that for a reason. So we can notice much of in those following words. Just through the source of the One, we have mind, light, the matter, mind matter hybrid, space, air space and water space, time, day and night, matter, earth and fire, earth, air, fire, water, mind, alchemy, space and time. So, in this interpretation, we can conclude that God creates from the thoughts within itself. This is no different than when we dream as we sleep. We don't create the dream out of nothing, we create it out of our thoughts, the thoughts of light, which manifest and descend in frequency to give us solid objects.